I know I'm not.
Biden is running the
Well,
country.
that's
He's the
that's a good
president.
thing.
Yeah,
Who's that? Is it President? Is it President Biden?
It's President Biden. He is the president.
And we have received certain directions or communications from him in the last few weeks
About what?
about anything. I haven't personally haven't heard a peep out of him in probably 3 weeks.
well, I do know that last week, or the beginning of this week, I think it was probably the beginning of this week, he came out with a thing saying changes he wants to see in the Supreme Court. I know that he has been in communication with definitely Premier Netanyahu and possibly some uh, of the Arab states concerning the Middle East. Those I know specifically to be true. Uh, as far as anybody telling me anything in particular, I really don't remember any president telling me anything in particular except Bill Clinton. About 10 years after he was president, I was at a campaign stop for a Lynch, who's a congressman from the Southie. And I said hello to Bill, and he said, "How are you?"
I guess I guess I want to back up a little bit further. Then I guess
Okay.
about maybe three weeks ago, maybe four, somewhere in that area, President Biden said that he fully intended to complete his term.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that didn't happen.
I
Is
disagree.
everybody okay with?
He
Well,
did.
He is the president.
He's the president. He's not running for a second term as of what 2 weeks ago. But
But one thing I do know that he was at Andrews Air Force Base receiving the freed hostages
yes,
from Russia. So that I think that happened. When was it? End of last week or something
yeah,
like that.
something like that. So
Yeah.
in the
So
past couple of
he was
weeks,
standing there.
he's doing his job.
So
Nothing's happening in Congress that he has to be involved in because Congress itself is on recess. So you can't
Well,
ask him to be doing something there.
no, he did give come out and say that he fully intended to run for re-election. Maybe
Yes.
that was the way I should have phrased it.
Yes.
And then something happened, and all of a sudden, Kamala is becoming the candidate, and it didn't sound like Biden was all in on doing that.
Uh, I think what
Do you
happened
think?
was he got convinced that if he ran, not only would he lose, but the Congress and the Senate would be decimated as well. And so he decided, for whatever reason, other than that, that certainly the Democratic Party, if not the country, would be better off with Kamala, I believe that's how it's pronounced,
Kamala.
being the candidate. So that's my understanding of what happened. Um, he's
So
being called.
you don't think he was forced out at all?
Well, if somebody presents very strong arguments to convince you to do something that you really didn't want to do personally, you could call that being forced out, or you could call that the natural understanding of the situation and adapting. I don't think
I,
anybody had a gun to his head, if that's
Well,
what you're saying.
I would I would characterize it that he was made to realize the reality of the situation, and he agreed with it, and then say forget it. I think that's what I would do. Of course, people had to have a chat with him and convince him, and of course that goes along with it. Of course, he's the president. You can't just tell him, okay, move on. He has to have conversations, why and how and all that. And so you could label it as forced out, or he agreed to the wise counsel of Pelosi and Clinton and Schumer and all those folks, and said, okay, you have it.
Yeah. I think the way Omanon phrased it is exactly right. I don't think he's happy, but whatever, when you sit down and you look at a bunch of arguments and you say, what's most important to me? I think, I think personally, that he decided that Trump not being president was the most important thing, particularly if his being president was going to be accompanied by a bunch of MAGA senators and congressmen being elected as well. And so far, at least, there's 3 months to go, it appears that the people who told him to drop out were right. I was just reading an article this afternoon where in the swing states, where things really have an effect, Kamala and Waze?
Wald, I think.
Waltz.
Waltz.
W-A-T-Z, is that it?
Yeah, I said what? I think it's Walls, right? No, maybe I'm wrong.
W-A-L.
I'm a little bit hard of hearing, so sometimes the pronunciation of things get screwed up in my head. In any case, they are surging in the swing states, the 8 or 10 swing states, several of which the Democrats were losing 3 weeks ago. Several of them are swinging into the Democratic column, and several of them are now toss-ups. So whoever gave him that advice, at least for the time being, was right. Now, again, 3 months to go. An interesting question, primarily for Chuck. When it was presented to Biden, all the bad things that would happen if he didn't drop out, he decided to drop out. If you look at what's going on now, the question might be, should Trump drop out? Remember, he's the old one. He's the one who has a tendency to wander off subject constantly. He's the one who is worried about how he's going to pay back all the people who did these bad things to him for the past 10, 20, 30 years. Maybe the Republicans would be better off if he dropped out.
Well, I don't believe that's true. I mean, I think that I'm not convinced that Biden has much to say about anything going on right now. I'm not sure he had a whole lot to say about what was going on even recently. I think there were other people in the background who were calling the shots, and I believe that that's why Kamala, up until sometime late this afternoon, she finally spoke to some of the press, probably because she's starting to feel the pressure that she hasn't said a word about anything in the weeks that she's been in the position she's been in. And
by the way, Trump hasn't talked to anybody.
Wait a minute. Time out.
Either.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I really don't. Biden is the president, and he makes the decisions right now. Kamala does not make the decisions right now. She's the vice president.
I can tell you positively believe that, Paul.
Yes, I do.
And that's fine. That's fine. I don't believe that.
Why
And
not?
I have.
Why not?
That? Because he's not capable of doing that. That's why he's no longer in the position.
He's
he
capable.
hasn't been in the position to be. He hasn't been in the position to call the shots for quite some time.
Who told you that?
He's not there, and that was very evident when he had that debate with Trump back a month or so ago, and I think that finally struck enough people to decide he had to be out of that spot as far as being in control, being involved ASAP, because they were going to definitely lose the election if he was still the candidate. So they
But
had to get him out of the scene.
Election notwithstanding, what has happened is if you watch Biden after his decision to drop out, you see him much more cheerful and much more active and much more coherent and much more actively doing things in a more programmed way rather than from a teleprompter. And I was impressed actually the other day when he was interacting with the hostage families particularly, and I thought he was doing much better than we saw him during the debate.
He may very well be Omanon, because maybe he's not feeling the pressure
Yeah.
of being in that spot anymore.
I mean, that's good.
And he knows, right? I think that's good too.
And he's recovering from COVID.
I'm not personally convinced that he was, and I don't believe. I think there are other people behind the scenes that are calling the shots.
Well, two things to talk about. One, there are people behind the scenes for every person who's making a decision, because they're appointed to do the research. We were talking before the show about projects.
I'm not talking about those kind of people.
Well, that's the people who are behind the scenes. Whether they're official, they're a kitchen cabinet. Remember Truman's kitchen cabinet? Everybody has people they talk to who have information that goes into making a decision. That's one. Two, I believe that for a sitting president who is only in one term, Biden is doing more presidential stuff today than anybody else, because otherwise, if he were still running for president, he'd be out running around the country trying to do the president's job at the same time he was trying to impress the world about all the wonderful things he says and does. So I think he's probably doing more presidential stuff today, certainly than Trump was doing this time 4 years ago. And by the way, that's not a knock on Trump 4 years ago. It's the nature of things. You have 24 hours in a day, and you have two totally full-time jobs.
What we don't have with Biden is that iconic picture, which you probably will remember, we had with President Kennedy standing the back. He was looking out the window during Cuban Missile Crisis. That kind of a picture, iconic picture, would convince people, no, there is something going on in his head. We don't have that kind of a impressive picture for Biden. They might be, it might come out later, but we don't have it at the moment.
Well, I think that would have been a bad picture for Biden, because the Republicans would have said he's totally out of it. He has no idea what he's doing. He's just staring out instead of doing his job.
That's interesting. Interesting take
What,
on it.
do you think I'm wrong?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting because when Kennedy's picture was flashed, it was, wow, look at how much weight is there on his shoulders. Oh, actually, that was true, actually, at that time. What was happening behind the scenes, we have no idea. Who was pulling the strings? That came out later, but he had the decision to make.
Right. And it was a very real decision that could easily have resulted in atomic war.
Yeah.
I don't think I personally don't think the purpose of this forum is to try to convince each other that one of us is right and the other one's wrong. I think it should just be an opportunity for us to express our feelings and our beliefs, and let it lay and be questioned on some part of that, but not with the goal of trying to change people's minds, because that's not going to go anywhere at this point in time.
No.
I agree with you. It should be a giving of information to the public who actually is looking at us. Maybe however many thousands there are.
Thousands?
And I don't think any of us should be insulted by that or be feeling like we're being attacked.
Well, I agree. I think one of the things that I have to disagree a little bit with what you just said was if you're providing information, someone else may be in a position to challenge that information.
Oh, I don't have a problem with that.
And hopefully that's it's understood that that's what I was doing. But okay, well, we talked a little bit about whether Biden is in charge or not. Again, none of us are going to know. I can tell
We
you.
might know it.
Huh?
We might know at some point in time. Just so I get it off my chest.
Yeah.
I mean, I strongly believe that Obama, Pelosi, and some of those people are the ones that are really calling the shots. That's my belief.
Okay, I don't believe that, but I will say that if Obama is one of the ones calling the shots, I think that's a good thing. Why don't we move on to another major issue in the campaign, which is the border. Obviously, there are a lot of people coming across the border, coming across without being documented. In many cases, they're turning themselves in, literally turning themselves in to the first person who looks like they're in charge. That person is essentially documenting that they're there, and in many cases, not all, but in many cases, giving them a court date, saying, come to this place at this time, so that the court can decide whether in fact you should stay or should be sent back. Some are sent directly back for a variety of reasons. One of the facts that is misstated is the vast majority, like 90% of the people who are released under these terms show up at the appointed time. So it's not like...
I have to interrupt you, Bob, but where do you get that fact? I've never heard that.
I've seen it in a number of places. I don't have a computer in front of me, so I can't find it for you. But I'll make a note and see if I can dig up the quotes.
My understanding that many of these people are being told that 7 to 9 years from now you show up in court.
Well, it could well be 7 to 9 years because we have cut, with more people coming in, we've cut the court, the judges, etc. So more people are coming in, there are less people to do the job, it takes longer. Another fact that is misstated is that the vast majority of these migrants are law-abiding, because if they get caught doing any crime, it's noted that they are undocumented and they get deported. And oh yeah, so they'll come back in. Many of them don't have the money to pay the people who help them get back in. So they're screwed. But okay, in any case, is what they're talking about, what is happening at the border, a good thing or a bad thing? Two, when Biden recently attempted to come up with a stronger border policy, which was passed by the Senate, bipartisan, and then rejected by the House after Trump said, do not pass this, we don't want to give Biden an election issue. What should we be doing now? Obviously, the Congress isn't in session. They can't do anything tomorrow. But what should we be doing now? Should we point out the fact that there could have been some improvement, assuming that less people coming over is an improvement? And if so,
have you ever read, Bob? Have you ever read what that
What the law was?
What that was as far as what the conditions were?
I remember some of the conditions. The biggest one was they would close the border if in any week more than 5,000 people came across undocumented in a day. So they closed it
Yeah,
completely. So that was the key thing. There were some other stuff which unfortunately I've forgotten. I'm 80 years old. Things slip my mind occasionally.
They were supposed to hire a large number of judges and a large number, like 50,000 border agents, people to keep the peace. Border agents are as in police type. That's why, for two reasons. One, it would have cost money, and the House did not want to spend any money. And two, Trump told them not to because he wanted to do it. The current border situation is Trump's, not Biden's. Trump is responsible for it. He told them not to do anything about it. They had Republican and Democrat senators pass this thing. It had a lot of things that the Republican senators wanted, and the guy in the Speaker of the House wouldn't take it up.
How many Republicans voted and senators voted in favor of it?
I think 15 to 20.
No, I don't believe that's true. I think it was more closer to 2 or 3.
I do remember
2 or 3
that
worked on it. Then they brought it to the House.
Also, I want to point out, as I've said before, when we were discussing some of this some time ago, the House passed a bill almost 2 years ago, H.R. 2, that passed the House. The Senate would not even consider it. Schumer just tossed it aside and said he wouldn't even talk about it. So that never, why isn't that just as important what the Senate passed?
the difference being what the House passed was purely Republican, no bipartisan input whatsoever. And two, I personally think, although this is the way our government works, that if one house passes something, the other one should take it up, reject it. I'll accept that you reject it for whatever reason, but you should at least take it up. But the primary difference between H.R. 2 and this thing from earlier this year was, in one case, it was purely Republican. It was their priorities, no negotiation, nothing from the Democrats. In the other case, it was bipartisan. And I know that there had to be more than 2 or 3 Republicans voting for it, because given the rules that say that, I can't remember what it is, it's 60 votes.
60 votes.
60 votes in the Senate in order to even bring 51. It up. So therefore, it had to be at least 10 Republicans.
Okay, well, that should be a good thing to check on anyways. I'll check on that.
Okay. Well, but what should we be doing now? What is the thing that we should be doing? Should we lock down the border, which, by the way, means that we don't have any people to harvest the crops, plant and harvest the crops? Because in large measure, this is being done by undocumented people, even though they come back every year. Should we lock down the border so that we don't have people to wash dishes in restaurants? Should we lock down the border so that we don't have people in rest homes? I'm 80, so I have to start thinking about things like this, to take care of the elderly, because nobody else is doing it for the prices that people are willing to pay? Should we hire a lot more border agents so that we have a better idea of who's coming across? Should we hire more judges so we can adjudicate these things that much quicker? What should we be doing?
From my side, I think you are bringing all kinds of these sensitive points up. But at the same, I mean, no, recognizing all that, that means the Congress should recognize all those needs and revise the immigration policy at the border and not make it open season for everybody to come in, so that they could institute a migrant kind of a work program, for example, or they could have certain limits put on the people who come across the border. That means they have to have enough judges to adjudicate fast, have more border agents. Basically, there has to be a lot more money spent rather than just saying things, I will do this or I will, it doesn't matter who the president is. Because what is happening is that if you have these thousands and thousands of people coming through every day, you're not actually able to regulate who can actually do the work or who cannot do the work, and at the same time overwhelm the infrastructure what we don't have. And so that's a big burden. Actually, look what is happening in Massachusetts. You have all these camps being set up at the airport at different places, and there now the regulation says you can stay there for 5 days. Where are they going to go? So it's kind of at the moment it's a mess, and I don't think any humanitarian agency can cope with it the way it is. So I think the Congress has to step up the plate. But I think the politics should be placed outside this realm. And that's why when Trump told everybody not do that, that's a bad move so far as the whole country is concerned. Maybe good for winning an election, but not for the country. That's what I kind of feel. That's not a good thing. Similarly, if Biden does not do something, that's also bad for the country. So some negotiation has to be done with full faith on the motives of each of the parties concerned, actually, without any concern for winning or losing the election, to save the country.
I personally believe that democracy is negotiation. You never get everything you want. Mm-hmm. You have to give up some things that you don't want to give up. The other guy gets some stuff, and you make progress towards hopefully a common goal, but at least things get better than they were. And I think that we've lost sight of that when we demonize the other side. McConnell is a person I do not like. I don't like his politics. I don't like his techniques, his strategies and tactics, but I give him a great deal of credit. He understands that you give a little to get a little. And when he gives up his post in a couple of months, the person who replaces him will, by their very nature, be unable and unwilling to do that. And if you think it's little is done in the Congress today, wait till you see the new leader of the Republicans in the Senate. And the only thing that could prevent that from happening is for the Democrats to get a supermajority and force the Republicans to get whatever they can get by negotiation. But that's
Paul. What are your thoughts about the border?
My thoughts on the border is it should be fixed, and the Republican presidential candidate said don't fix anything until next January, and that's unthinkable. That's unthinkable.
I'm waiting for
Well, they're not going to be able to fix anything between now and January anyways, because Congress is adjourned.
Right.
So,
but back in the spring, they were there.
What is your overall feeling about all this people entering this country?
I think they need to be, when they come in, they need to be interviewed and see if they're appropriate to enter the country. And right now we don't have enough people to do those interviews. We don't have enough police to monitor the border agents to monitor it. We don't have enough judges to hear it. That's what that bill was supposed to address. And the Republican candidate for president said, "Don't do anything for the next 10 months." That's
Now,
unbelievable.
Is there any limit on the number of people coming in that you feel?
Of course.
Oh,
It has to be organized.
but do you have a general idea how many more people?
17, 2,000, 185,000. I don't know. I don't know what the number is. I'm not, I'm not privy to the details.
Oh.
What I do know is they should be interviewed. They should see a judge, and the judge should decide yes or no. And right now, the Republican Congress decided not to do anything about this. The border problem belongs to the Republican Congress.
I think that's a bit extreme. Even if they had implemented
there'd still be a problem.
There'd still be a problem.
But it would be, we would be on the way to fixing it, as opposed to just letting it fester.
Improving it. I'd like to. One of the things that we keep hearing is, you hear occasionally that some illegal, undocumented person killed someone, and everybody gets very angry about that. Statistically, it's very unlikely. If you're going to get killed, you're more likely to be killed by somebody who's an American. But I'm waiting for someone to kill somebody, a migrant, to kill somebody, the migrant having come to the country in the last 3 to 4 months, when perhaps that might have been prevented by the bill that Biden had proposed and negotiated and got through the Senate. And I'm wondering what the Republicans would say at that point. Because everything else you can claim, well, you were president when, so therefore it's your responsibility. By the way, I never hear the Republicans say COVID happened when Trump was president, so therefore it's his responsibility. But that's a different story entirely. But I wonder what would happen if somebody came across the border, let's say 2 months ago, killed somebody, or was accused of killing somebody, as the case may be, and it was pointed out he might not have been here if the Republican Congress had passed the original bill. What do you think I'm talking to Chuck, what do you think the Republicans should say under those circumstances? Should they ignore it? Should they pretend it didn't happen?
I was confused the way you phrased it.
Okay.
You saying the person came here?
It's a hypothesis. To my knowledge, it has not happened. But I'm proposing that if somebody 2 months ago crossed the border, registered, was released, and then killed somebody in a heinous fashion, when it was pointed out that they came 2 months ago, where they might not have been here if the Republican House had been willing to take up and pass the bill from the Senate, what would the Republican attitude be? Would it be the same anger that this is all Biden's fault because he was president, as opposed to, I tried to fix it and you said no? I don't know. You're getting all twisted up here, and at least okay. I'm getting twisted up in what you're trying to. Maybe somebody else can explain it better.
No, that's all right.
Well, let me share something else. Actually, the border problem needs a long-term solution. You cannot have thousands of people crossing the border every day. It is a problem. That way, that's what I think I have said this earlier also. We have to do something, involve Mexico, involve Central American countries to fix the long-term issues that is actually generating these waves. And somehow the coyotes have to be gotten rid of. Somehow the drug issues have to be taken care of. Somehow the employment issues have to be taken care of. You can't get rid of the governments which are corrupt there, but some long-term formula has to be done. Look, when President Reagan was president, he regularized, I forgot what the number was, undocumented aliens in who were living in the United States at that time, and I don't know how many they were. But then, the long-term solution was not found. Although during Clinton's time they did the
The Dreamers.
I forgot the name of the
Dreamers.
treaty that was created
Yeah.
to kind of do some part of it. So, but something to that effect has to be done again in a more methodical way. On top of having more judges, more border patrol. I don't know whether a wall actually helps, but if that satisfies some people, put a wall up as well. But do not get 5,000 people into the United States every day. That is basically going to degrade the infrastructure the way we have it.
But there is a solution that has been tried and was successful in the 1990s. In the 1990s, it wasn't people from Central and South America coming over, it was Mexicans.
Mexico, yeah.
And everybody was upset about all these Mexicans coming in. And they passed a law, suddenly I can't remember the name of it, somebody will think of it, where it became legal for companies to move their manufacturing plants, to Mexico, and then bring the products back to America. And suddenly, the number of Mexicans coming across the border dropped precipitously.
Yeah.
Biden asked Kamala Harris when they first started to take up looking at long-term solutions for why people keep trying to come to America in such great numbers. She was not the border czar. She had nothing to do with specific border policy, despite what Trump and Vance are saying. Her job was to go to the countries where the people were originating and talk to them about what could be done to reduce the migration. Now, how successful she was at it, I don't know, but at least that is based on something that worked in the recent past. So NAFTA, thank you.
It just occurred to me. Yeah, NAFTA was, that's, Trump amended that, and that was good.
Yes.
But the question is, that is what we need to do something similar.
I agree. And when you were asking for a long-term solution, that's the real long-term solution. Nobody wants to leave their home if they can avoid it. It's what they know. Even if they're not happy there, they at least understand it. So they're forced out either because fear or the possibility of tremendous opportunity. All with the exception of you, because you did it yourself, all the rest of us, our grandparents or parents came under those circumstances. And you have to give people a reason to stay home. And it shouldn't be that if you come across the border, I'm going to shoot you. Or worse yet, I'm going to shoot your kids.
If you compare the southern border versus regular immigration takes years before you can actually get across and come in. But across the border, people walk in and they're here. So that is where the disparity is, and something has to be done long term, so that countries happy, gets the workers, and at the same time, countries' infrastructure is not degraded and lost in the meantime.
No, I agree. And at the same time, to look at it slightly different, um, we are a compassionate country. We want to help people who need help. Burlington has a bunch of 60 families, I think, in long-term care, some of which are migrants, not all, some of which are migrants. And we're doing what we can to help them, integrate them into the community. And that is a good thing. We should never lose that. Because at some point, it could be us.
That's true. But have it regulated.
I agree with that, if at all possible. The numbers are too big to regulate, and we are deliberately not regulating. The solution, the only solution that some of our population believes in is shut the damn border, and anybody who comes in illegally should be punished to the full extent, and I didn't say of the law. Put up border barriers in such a way that people will drown if they try to come over. By the way, that's Texas's solution. We lose our humanity if the only thing we can see is to stop everything.
That's why the long-term solutions are what are needed, and at the same time preserve our humanity, because you don't want to lose the humanity part.
Yeah.
Actually, although we did lose it during World War II,
Yes.
but that's beside the point.
Well, we hopefully learned from it. I know some people who were either interned or were the children of people who were interned. And it's amazing that they have accepted and moved on. Because if that happened to me, I'm not quite sure how I would have reacted. It was just totally unfair. Hey, you look like this, your name sounds like that, you shouldn't be here. I can't send you back because I can't get you there. So therefore, I'm going to isolate you. I'm going to treat you like crap. The people that I know who are descendants of that group have accepted it more or less and moved on. But
I was also thinking about how during World War II you had the ship full of people, Jewish people particularly, who were not allowed to dock, and they ended up getting killed.
They were children.
So what do you do?
They were children. They weren't even adults. They were children who had their parents and others had paid tremendous amounts of money to get them a place on that boat.
That was under the Roosevelt administration, right?
Yes, it was.
I mean, that's what I was saying, that we did lose humanity during that time as well. But long-term solutions have to be found. That's what I would do.
Well, do you have a long-term solution other than the NAFTA that we already talked about?
No, I mean that's one aspect. That's why I said involve Mexico, involve Central American countries, and understand what the problems are. That is why it is going to take a long time to. It may not be possible to do it in 1 year. It may take 4 years to get that started, even because it is the problems in Central American countries are very complex, and also a lot of American companies have actually been part of the problem. So it's I don't know how they can disentangle that. But I'm not a politician. I have no idea.
Well, and the other thing is, nothing that we do will be perfect. NAFTA got rid of a whole bunch of Mexican immigrants, and it cost some Americans their jobs. And at some point, somebody has to make a decision and say, this is the cost, but the result is worth it. Whatever it is. I mean, you bring the factories back here, there'll be more American jobs, but then we'll have a whole bunch of Mexicans coming across.
Is NAFTA still in effect?
Yeah, Trump amended it. The primary amendment, as I understand it, was he changed the name.
Oh,
But there was some minor things. If you look at around Michigan, a lot of the parts plants that feed the automobile industry are in Windsor, Ontario. And the same rules that govern things going across the Mexican border govern things going across the Canadian border. And do we want to stop that? And how much more do we want to pay for our cars?
I wasn't asking about stopping it. I was trying to think about increasing it. How do we increase it?
Oh,
And I think the other thing is that a lot of the manufacturing that was supposed to go to NAFTA went to the Far East because they were cheaper.
probably. And unfortunately, multinational corporations are not run by the U.S. government or the English government or whatever, and they do what they think is best for their shareholders. Now, we can change all that, I suppose. Is that what we want to do?
Sounds like your socialism is coming out.
What sounds, I am well, number one, I am a believer that the word socialism is not a curse word. Feeding children, giving people opportunity to show their talents, etc., I think is a positive thing. And if I was sitting with a copy of Adam Smith's book, I'm sure I would find that some of what he's promoting, he thinks will be part of that. So, but yeah, my priorities, however we get there, are that everybody has a shot, everybody gets to eat, get health care. I have an opportunity to have a good time occasionally. And if that's socialism, sure, okay. But I kind of thought that was capitalism as well.
It is capitalism because that way you are actually distributing wealth by virtue of providing jobs to a lot of people according to their merit. And so it's capitalism in that sense, but at the same time, you are keeping avenues open for more people. That's where the socialist part comes in. Equal opportunity, I mean.
Yeah, I don't think capitalism, theoretical capitalism, ever thought that there would be no opportunity for people based on their group or their name or their origin, etc. They assumed that everybody was equal. In practice, it hasn't necessarily worked that way. And socialism probably has similar problems. I don't know of any socialist country, pure socialist country in the world. I do know that when communities attempted to implement socialist and communist philosophies, they survived for a short period of time. Unfortunately, they also tended to believe that sex was bad, so they died off because they never had new people coming in.
Well, if you look at Russia, it's a supposedly communist country. Maybe not now, but a little earlier. Even now, they have that control. But if you look at the elite, they have their what do they call dashas? Dashas.
Dakas. Yeah.
Dakas.
D-A-C-H-A.
Yes.
I spelled something
So
right.
they have dakas for themselves, and for common folk, it's communism. So where is the where does that work? That's how it plays in actuality.
I'm a political scientist by education, and the natural order of things is that people do not come together and make a decision that everybody accepts and goes along with. So you need groups or individuals to organize the masses. And those individuals are treated better than the people who aren't the leaders. It's humanity. You can look at animals, herd animals, and that's how it works there too. You can look at insects, and it works that way. Life organizes in this way. Now, maybe it would be better if it was done another way. Nobody's figured out how to do it.
It's human nature that we have the society self-organized or organized by coercion in different strata.
But it's not all even coercion. They used to laugh about Obama being a community organizer. Mm-hmm. And that's what a politician is. They stand up in front of the group and they say, this is what we ought to do. And the group in general goes along. Hell, Trump, as much as I dislike the man, is a community organizer. He proposes a view of the world, and a group accepts it, goes along with it. So politicians, this horrible word, is in fact a very, very vital portion of any society. Because
that's why if you have a savvy politician, whatever their views are, if they are able to convince 51% of the population, they got the flag to run with. That's it.
In a democracy, 51%.
And democracy, yes, they will sit on the throne. We may not like it, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
And
well, I guess, as they always say, we're not a democracy, we're a republic.
We are a republic.
Yeah.
Well, a republic is where you, instead of every individual voting on every single thing, we appoint via ballot people to represent us who, number one, so that we can go and do our jobs and feed our families, and they go off and make these decisions. And two, that the more complicated things that have to be decided, they either know more or are in a position to listen to people who know more so they can make a better decision.
And hopefully spend time learning the issues and hobnobbing with the concerned parties in a meaningful manner.
Yes.
That's what they are supposed to be doing.
Right. And that's what a republic is, as opposed to democracy.
Yeah.
I wonder even if you go to the Burlington town meeting, that is not a democracy because we elect people to represent us. And so far, at least, I guess they've done a pretty good job. Because even with the anticipated increases in taxes, we're still paying a heck of a lot less than the people around us, and our services are at least as good.
Mm-hmm.
What more can you ask of your government?
So we solved the water issue.
Okay. What about the economy? The Democrats are being killed in the economy because this time, 4 years ago, prices were much lower. Gas prices. There was a point in time, I don't remember the exact date, but it was during that same period, where the world price for a barrel of oil was negative. There was no place for the people who were shipping the oil to the refineries to store it. The refineries weren't selling enough, so they couldn't buy it. So oil was sitting on ocean tankers, going around through the ocean with no place to go, and it was negative for a period of time.
That was during the COVID time.
Yes, and
at that time the consumption had decreased drastically.
Right, and so the price of oil, of gas was way down. If you could find food, it was cheap.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't find it because nobody was working. And now we're comparing the prices from that period to the prices today, and amazingly enough, now that everybody's working, it's so much higher. So is the economy better or worse than 4 years ago? And I'm being very specific about 4 years ago. Because if you're going to compare the prices of gas at the pump, when it was what the hell was it 4 years ago? 2 something?
Mm.
Does that sound right?
I don't remember.
And it was up as high as $5 about a year ago. It's now, the place I use as a reference is the Shell station in the center of town. It's $3.39. It just went up from $3.35.
Yeah. Well, I think there is an explanation of why things cost so much more, and that is the Fed, when it created so much extra money, and the goods didn't increase with the extra money. So therefore, if there's this much money, the goods have to rise to make it the same. That's why the inflation happened, because there was so much extra dollars created in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. If it takes a certain amount of work hours to create something to sell, and the money itself is so much cheaper, you need to spend more money to get it. So that's the reason why the inflation is so high. Inflation is things cost the same amount based on dollars, a fraction of the dollars of all the dollars in existence. During that period of time, 2019, 20, 21, 22, the amount of dollars increased by, I don't know, $100 or $200 trillion. So therefore, everything else went up.
Well, there was other factors as well. You couldn't get at things, if you remember.
I'm talking about now.
Oh, well, now, as long as you're willing to spend $5 for a gallon of milk, that's what a gallon of milk will cost. You'll see a Stop and Shop this week, it just ended this evening, was charging $3.99 for lactate milk, a gallon of lactate milk. I'm lactose intolerant, so I keep track of that number. It was $5 for a long time. When people start buying the milk at $3.99 and then say, okay, I'm not going to buy it at $5 anymore, the price will come down to the point where people have to make a decision. Either I don't provide lactate milk anymore because I can't make a profit at it, or I keep the price somewhat higher and I sell less than I would otherwise. So it's the two things. It's supply and demand, the classical economics, And it's also what you're willing to pay. And there are many documented cases of companies who say, everybody else is charging a ton of money for their product, I'll try it too. And if people will buy it, that's great. And that's some of the things that that supposedly Congress should be investigating, but they're too busy investigating other things. But again, that's capitalism. Things cost what you're willing to pay for it. And if you're not willing to pay for what it costs me to produce it, I won't produce it. All right. We just got we're almost to the end. Anybody have any other points they want to make in the last couple of minutes?
All set.
But I was going to give you the example of the pet rock. There was a craze about pet rocks for some time, and people were willing to pay and buy a pet rock.
Oh.
What would you do with a pet rock? Some companies sold pet rocks.
Yes. And
So that's capitalism.
my daughter, I think, had one for a while. It's,
Oh, is that right? No.
God knows what happened to it, but it was important, so you got it for your kid.
So what would you do? What was the kid supposed to do with the pet rock?
Have it.